Welcome to Talk to Me, a podcast to provide a safe and brave space to have courageous conversations about the changes we want to see for system-involved young people. The aim of this podcast is to support young people with issues that are commonly encountered in the foster care and juvenile justice systems, and offer resources to navigate and overcome these issues. We really have exciting guests, subject matter experts, and young people with lived experience on today's episode. Before we get started, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. The creators of this podcast recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tatatvion, Sereno, Quiche, and Chumash people. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past and present and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevate the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments. To learn more about the first people of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City/County Native American Indian Commission website at lanaic.lacounty.gov. Now on to the episode.
Hi everyone, my name is Sherrie Bradford and I am the host today of the Tay podcast, and I have here with me.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris and I am a youth commissioner for LA County.
I'm Arlena Ortega and I am a guest on here.
And hi, my name's Elizabeth Nails. I work for the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture.
So this is episode 1, and today we're going to be talking about arts and healing, and I don't want to keep you guys waiting, so let's start off with the first question. How has art, music, visual art, makeup, dance played a role in your healing process or self-expression during hard times?
Personally, for me, I've been into makeup and hair most of my life. I got it from my mom. I think it was always a way of expressing myself and also feeling normal, because like in the system, you feel very abnormal compared to your peers. So it was a way that I bonded with my fellow group home sisters, and I used to run a makeup class. So it was kind of like, it was like meditating for all of us.
Yeah, and I think for me, what's really important about arts, when it comes to healing, is that it really allows us to take agency and power in what we do. Oftentimes, what we've seen and the experiences we've had in the system are really centered around what others want for us. And when it comes to art, it's more of leading. And for me, my art medium has been dance. Dance is how I've communicated since I was a youngster, and dance is what I really love to do. And what was powerful for me with respect to dance is that every movement was every movement that I did on stage or wherever I was really represented something powerful for me, something that I could own and something that I knew that I was directing. And so it really, helped us develop certain skills, and it helped us create our own. Art really helps us create our own paths. So that's what I really felt was powerful about the arts.
Okay. And how do you see the arts contributing to the mental health and the well-being of youth in the system?
Oh, thanks for the question. Everything you shared really touches me, because I really believe in the creative capacity of every human. And we all have different ways to connect to creativity, and it's a healing force. It's an ancient ancestral technology, all these different ways of being creative, of connecting with each other. I think these are practices that are our human legacy. They should be made available to all. There's different culturally relevant ways for young people to connect to the arts, to find their voice, to find hope, build connection, and really dream and build imagination for the future that they can move.
I really like that. I really like that. Can any of you guys share a personal experience where you were creating or experiencing art that helped navigate emotional challenges or things such as in your professional development?
That's a really good question. I think, tying back to having our own voice, something I thought was very interesting that you mentioned. I hear a lot of people really who, when it comes to budget, a lot of people have arts as their last source, right? A lot of people are focused on, and this is like a county, state level, federal level. A lot of people, when there is a very tight budget, it's like the arts is not as indispensable as perhaps math and or another very orthodox subject. Something that I always find interesting is that with the arts, people are able to develop creativity and people are able to develop discipline by themselves. I think one quote that I always think about often when thinking about the arts is something that actually John F. Kennedy said with respect to discipline. He said that art is not freedom from discipline, but disciplined freedom. And I think what's really important about that is that with art, we have the ability to develop the discipline that people want us to develop in an orthodox classroom setting. When it comes to specific experiences that I've had, a lot of the times I feel like being in a location for too long, I feel like I'm being restricted. I feel like I'm being, that I have to listen to certain things that perhaps don't fit with me or don't work for me because of the experiences that I've had with the system. And so something that's more specific is, growing up, I would spend like a lot of systems involved you a lot of time in court. And again, that's a place where a lot of people have to be very quiet, that they show, propriety and everything. And so for me, I've always used kind of writing aside from dance as an outlet to express myself. And I can develop my discipline in a way that also allows for me to be really creative.
Okay. And did you want to say anything about the specific thing? Have you ever created something to help you within professional development, such as your artistic talents, or just in general to help you with any type of situation you were going through?
I would say my school journey from being a cosmetologist and barber, it's a very strict and demanding schedule. You have to want it to finish it. And I think that's what developed my my discipline and also reassured me that I'm going down the right path. Yeah, so I lost my mom a few years ago, and that's like I shortly entered school after that. So that's kind of how I tapped into my creativity and trying to get my fullest potential out. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I thank you for also talking about just in general, like when it comes to like budgets. Most of the time, art programs are like the first to be cut. So another question I have is what type of initiatives or policies or programs that are created to supplement those art programs for former foster youth or system impacted youth?
I can speak to that. Some of the work I get to collaborate on through the county is something called creative well-being. And it's all about combining healing-centered arts with mental health promotion for young people in foster care system or systems impacted or at a heightened risk of being impacted. And not only is it for the youth, it's for the adults supporting the young people. So they're really taking a holistic view that this is a ecosystem of well-being here. And young people need to have opportunities to, like both of you just voiced, you found your own healing through your creative practice. Art can be for process. It can be for product. It can lead to careers. There's some amazing creative career pathways. But back to policy, it's really interesting that this creative well-being is really centering arts at the forefront, saying arts is the strategy to address some of these bigger problems that we're challenged by. That arts don't need to be at the side. In fact, if you put them at the center and lead through the arts, some of those benefits start happening that we're looking for social, emotional growth and development, youth development, for young people to find empowerment for their own journey, to lead the life they want to live. A lot of that comes through the arts and through finding meaning and validation for their experiences. Because young people that are systems impacted face a lot of things. The system presents a lot of challenges, and the arts are a way, I think, if one has experienced trauma, the arts is a place where you don't necessarily have to, it's not talk therapy. Talk therapy has value, but sometimes you need a space to just begin getting in touch with yourself. It's about creative, and it's about that good energy that we all have inside.
Yeah, so I really like what you said there. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then all of you guys, thank you so much for sharing. I want to ask this one question because I think it just speaks to like me personally. But why do you think art is super important for system impacted? But also, what does art mean for your community? So each of us come from different communities, right? So what have you seen with art in communities? Like, have you seen it like progress? Has it been a way of like advocacy? Has art been a way for people to heal within communities? So I kind of wanted you guys to talk a little bit more about art and community and what that looks like.
Well, I'm sure. And just right before I answer that question, I wanted to touch a bit upon what you said, because I thought it was incredibly insightful. A lot of the times when we're trying to make a pitch for why the arts is, again, an indispensable facet of our healing journey as systems involved youth, I think that a lot of folks, say, oh, well, what will be the final product, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like we should start framing it in a way where the process of engaging with art is a product itself, right? Because we get to create something. And so instead of seeing things as something that, there's this outcome, the process itself is the product. And why is it the product? Because oftentimes when we are thinking about, funders are oftentimes thinking, okay, well, what is going to be the end result? What do you predict is going to happen if I invest my money into this proposal? And so thinking about the fact that you're getting youth to engage, to critically think about perhaps societal problems that have existed for, centuries, then that can be a way as well to kind of start thinking about how this is efficacious in getting systems involved youth engaged with life, with, socially, and developing those skills. And then to the question that you were asking about, arts and what it means for our community, I think first I have to answer what it means for me. What it means for me is, growing up, I developed I had a very, very, very persistent speech impediment. And oftentimes it'll come up when I'm nervous or anxious. I used to pronounce a lot of words that started with the R and the S very bad, to the point where people would inquire about what I said. And then I would be embarrassed to repeat what I said. So I would just shy away from, ever giving the response again that I had already given. I turned to dance again as my arts medium. And what dance, my family is from Mexico City. And so cumbia is quite popular there. And that's really what I learned to dance. And I became very curious, right? This art of dance really, inspired a lot in me. It ignited a curiosity to learn more about other dances. And as a result, to learn about other cultures. And so when we think about arts and what it means for me, is it helped me communicate with people who are different. What it meant for my community is it's brought a lot of joy, a lot of freedom to engage with each other in a way that is powerful, but also transformative.
We all come from different communities, and has it been a healing? Has it been maybe advocacy? I know specifically, to just give a little more detail, for when the George Floyd killing, happened, a lot of, people in the Black Lives Matter movement came out and protested. And some people drew artistic posters of George Floyd. And I know some people in my family, they ended up writing songs, poems. And for us, specifically during that time, it was advocacy. It was me tapping into and talking to people and calling all these different call centers and being like, hey, this is not okay. So art was for us like a social justice. So like, what does art mean for your community?
I think a main one would be music. I personally don't play any instruments, but I think that was one of my first like role models was my sister and my uncle. They were very big into like band and stuff. And I know that the discipline that they had in it, like I guess like the practices and everything, I just seen that it kept them out of trouble. So I think that's an example of how it helped our community, but I can't really think of a lot more other ones.
Okay. And did you want to elaborate?
I just want to uplift the amazing community in LA and the arts organizations. I think the county's realizing how much strength and potential is there through programs like creative well-being and youth development through the arts. Mm-hmm. We're funding artists to come into juvenile justice settings, into foster care settings, STRTPs, FFAs, to really bring arts directly to young people impacted by systems. So there's a lot of growth in those programs happening right now, and I believe there needs to be more across the board. But the artists leading this work, not only do they provide programs through things that Art Department of Arts and Culture funds, they're offering amazing opportunities for youth to get engaged through different art forms. Because as you said, there's so many different ways: dance, makeup, art. There's poetry, making beats, laying down lyrics. All these groups will definitely share some resources to some programs. Most of these programs are free and available to youth, and several of them are specifically for young people impacted by system.
Okay, so I have two questions for the next one. And these I feel like are really important because it comes to the arts. Like you said earlier, that oftentimes when it comes to budget cuts, arts are cut first, right? So I myself was kind of like, kind of a victim to this, but it's often hard to find art programs, right? So like, let's say you're into acting, right? I feel like I didn't know about Kids in the Spotlight, but I love Kids in the Spotlight. I didn't know about Kids into the Spotlight till I was probably like 23. And by that time it was like, I was over the age limit. So how do you guys feel about like exposure to the arts, like art programs and things of that nature? Because as you're saying, like the creative well-being, but I didn't even know that existed. So what is kind of like your outreach to specific different entities within the foster care system? So STRTPs, maybe it's going to group homes, maybe it's going to juvenile halls. But I think what I've seen a lot of times with youth is they just don't know that there's out there. Like I barely just found out that you can make beats. And then the second question is, how can more social service agencies and nonprofits kind of band together to make sure there's a collective, maybe resource list or like a spreadsheet, something where you can go and be like, hey, I want to go to dance class, but I happen to have a disability. So I would like to go to a dance class with people who are very similar to me. So that's kind of like the question I asked. I know that was a mouthful, so let me know if you guys want me to.
You know, one of the things I'm thinking about is right now, as we speak, we're doing a lot of advocacy for the arts, right? We want to move it from it being the first thing people cut to it being something that isn't cut. And so as I'm thinking about how governments, local, state, and federal governments, you know, there comes a time when they must, when they fund it. And if it's funded, then there are a lot of steps that I think are just as indispensable as funding the arts that are oftentimes overlooked. And one of the things is, how are we going to ensure that the funding for the arts is actually being maximized? And one of the things is, for example, I think a few years ago, the state of California passed a huge bill that funded the art, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. 28, yeah. And one of the things is that I think oftentimes happens is, okay, you're funding the arts now, but how are we going to ensure that the right teachers who are prepared to teach the arts, people who have the expertise to teach the arts, are placed into classrooms, right? We want to make sure that we are being intentional. And by we, I mean people who have power. or people who have the ability to influence, right? I think oftentimes we got to also make sure that we are thinking about how it's going to be implemented, not just how it's going to be introduced.
Have you ever had experience with like somebody tells you about something and you just never knew it existed and you wish you would have known it existed, and it was specifically, so it could be something like maybe a cosmetology program. I would say this, my job, I work with Stepping Forward LA. So I think that's a really good resource because it's primarily for former foster youth and lower income communities. So yeah, I would say that they've connected me to a lot of things. Okay, so if it was a situation, because where I'm trying to get at is what I've noticed from a lot of young people is they just don't know it exists. So if they weren't connected with the Stepping Forward LA, if they don't happen to have a social worker, if they age out of the system, like, do you feel like it's a lot harder to kind of get connected to resources, you know, designated for like former foster youth or like system impacted?
Yes, definitely. I have a lot of friends. I don't know if it counts as well for people who aren't in the system, because I think that's important as well. They go through some of the same things that we do, and sometimes they're just stuck with their family. I think it should be in schools.
I think there's two strategies I'm really interested in seeing more investment in. The first is more youth-led projects like this, where we're talking about programs and providing resources and just getting the word out and encouraging young people to be curious about what's available and to ask. And the second strategy is really getting to the adults supporting young people so that they have access to the resources and can refer, and to build up a referral system for arts in the county. And there's some really exciting platforms that are actually going, one's been released, and I'll make sure to get the resource to you all to include in the notes for the podcast. It's a way to search for arts programs under different criteria across the county. There's also a Creative Career Pathways search engine that's just being launched that you can really look for paid opportunities to learn, like you are, like doing the work, building career skills in a creative industry. So those are two things. I think there's a lot of work to be done, though. It's a big county, but I think it's going to take many pieces to make sure that young people know about the opportunities. Misana, you had a second question about how can social services collaborate more?
Yeah.
I'd say there are creative people everywhere you look, and often they are overlooked, or that they don't bring that piece of themselves fully to their work for whatever reason. But I've noticed that if you just allow people space to identify, like, well, I love arts and I want to lead something creative for our group. I've seen different mental health clinics just do a few workshops with staff where they invite different people to lead an arts activity, and how that starts building this confidence and culture and support that arts are important and we want to find ways to integrate them. So I'd say also allow spaces for youth to lead our creative practices for each other and for adults is hugely beneficial, because the minute people start doing even a simple thing like, you know, a check-in, like a 3-word check-in going around in a circle, that in its way is a small creative practice. And that can really shift culture over time. So things like this, you don't have to be a trained artist to have creative practice or healing through the arts. So that's also a part of what we're trying to build in creative well-being.
So we're kind of coming to a close, but I wanted to highlight a little bit about what you said about workspace, because I'm a creative person. And I feel like oftentimes just being former foster youth, I've kind of like hindered down on that because I want to be taken serious. But I also try to bring creativity within my spaces. But I think there's also that complexity of like, oh, what if they shut me down? So now you're feeling like, oh, is my work not enough? Am I not doing enough? So I think too, there's that aspect, but I do think you definitely affirmed me today to continue to push for those creative spaces. But I think one thing I want to ask you guys, what is something that you would like to leave here with the audience about arts and why it's important, and why kind of like a call for action, maybe why it's important and what ways people can get connected to like the arts and continue pushing for more creativity within our systems, within our future, within our communities?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think something that was said throughout this conversation was the fact that, a lot of us, in fact, everyone is creative or engages with the arts in their quotidian life, right? I would argue that from the moment that you are awake, your mind is acting in a very creative way, but people oftentimes disregard it. And I think it goes back to a lot of things that a lot of people say, right? When I was young, I had a sister who said that she wasn't good at math because her second grade teacher told her she wasn't good at math. So as she grew up, in her mind, she told herself, I'm not good at math. So she did not take math throughout for subsequent years, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think with art, a lot of us are in, subconsciously telling ourselves that we are not good at art or we're not artists. I do it myself as well when I can't draw very nicely, right? It's not my medium, but I do it all the time. So I think I really just want to encourage folks